Welcome to the Brisbane Channel for another monthly update on things that have been happening across Greater Brisbane in the last 30 days or so. And I've got 22 things to share. It's ridiculous how much is going on. I may actually have to make these things weekly instead of monthly because this is getting ridiculous. We've got the Queensland election tomorrow. So at the time of recording this video, Stephen Miles is the Premier of Queensland. That may be different by the time you watch this video, but we'll see what happens. But anyway, into the 22 updates that I have for you. The first update is something that was actually in the August update, but I've got an update to the update. In August, the Queensland government announced an inquiry into allegations of sexual abuse, beatings and chemical restraint at Wollston Park Mental Hospital from the 1950s to the 1980s. At Goodness Cemetery, there are over 200 graves belonging to former patients of Wollston Park. Each gravestone bears a number, but the actual identities of the people buried has remained a mystery. Earlier this month, it was announced that Professor Robert Bland would lead the review into Wollston Park. Professor Bland has indicated that one priority will be to rediscover the identity of those people that are buried in the graves. The investigation will look at services provided at Wollston Park from the 1st of January 1950 to the 31st of December in the year 2000. As part of the review, former patients and their families and carers may be invited to describe their treatment and experiences during that time. And while we're looking at subpar treatment of patients by hospital and medical institutions, an investigation into Redland Hospital has found that between 2000 and 2018, 73 patients received suboptimal care, and 12 died who may have lived longer due to bungled endoscopies and colonoscopies by two of the hospital's surgeons. While issues were known to exist as early as 2015, it wasn't until 2019 that Queensland Health was notified by the hospital's overseer, Metro South Health. While there are currently no legal cases against the hospital, Queensland Health Director-General Michael Walsh has promised to ensure any statute of limitations issues will not be a barrier to compensation claims being made. Of the 37 recommendations made in the report, 75% of them have already been implemented, and the two surgeons are no longer working for Queensland Health. But now on to medical news that is more positive. A nurse-led clinic has opened in the Brisbane CBD, which will provide more accessible, free healthcare to patients from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week. Located at 316 Adelaide Street, it's available to adults and children over the age of 2. It's the first of 4 nurse-led clinics planned to be opened in Queensland. 2 of them will be in Brisbane, this one in the CBD, but also one in Mount Gravatt, and the other 2 will be in Gympie and Gladstone. In other news, researchers analysing past Olympic Games' impact on their host cities' housing market and homelessness have warned that the 2032 Olympics could have a strongly negative impact on both housing affordability and levels of homelessness. The Olympics worsened housing affordability in all cities except Montreal in 1976 and Atlanta in 1996. They also saw huge spikes in house prices, averaging 14.3% within a 10-kilometre radius of stadiums in the 12 months following the Games. The 2032 Olympics Committee say this is likely due to increased population, infrastructure spending, and the sudden media focus on those suburbs. 8 years out from the Olympics, and we're still not even really clear on where those stadiums will actually be. But that's for another video. But Fiona Caniglia, the chief executive of Q Shelter, who commissioned the report, saw that if approached well, the Olympics could be an incredible opportunity, citing the 1956 Melbourne Olympics, where 600 homes of the former athletes' village were turned into public housing. She says that while we're not building enough social housing to meet Brisbane's 2032 population projections, if we turned our focus to addressing such issues, we could be the first host to have the Games end and not have worsened homelessness. And while we're on the topic of homelessness, just a couple of days ago, Brisbane City Council cut power to Kurilpa and Musgrave Park, where people who are currently homeless have camped. They also cut wires to the public barbecues, rendering them permanently unusable. The council cited public safety as the reason, saying that the camps are a hotbed of crime. Meanwhile, Moreton Bay City Council in Brisbane's north has called for more support from the state government to help with its homelessness situation. The city has seen a 90% increase in the number of people experiencing homelessness in the last decade, according to 2021 census data. They also point to a lack of social housing. An independent report commissioned by the council states that Moreton Bay has less social housing per capita than Ipswich, Logan and Redland, despite being one of the fastest growing areas of southeast Queensland. But let's move to something more positive. Brisbane City Council have announced a further extension of the Citylink cycleway from East Brisbane to West End, creating a 4-kilometre link that spans 2 river crossings. Stage 2, due for completion at the end of this year, will include the Kangaroo Point Bridge, which opens on December 15, but also extends the cycleway further southward to West End. The recently announced Stage 3 is still in the design stage, but will continue southward at either end. The project will be jointly funded by the city and state governments. The Brisbane Channel has a video that does a deep dive into Brisbane's active transport situation, the good and the bad, coming out really soon. And one thing that's excellent news for anyone thinking about investing in an e-bike or an e-scooter is that from the end of September, the Queensland Government is offering rebates for people who purchase one. You can get a rebate of $500 for e-bicycles and $200 for e-scooters. But you should get in quickly because the Queensland Government has announced that they're only allocating $1 million to the scheme, and they're expecting that amount to be exhausted pretty quickly. As the city starts to move away from being fully car-centric, Brisbane City Council has announced consultation has now opened for a plan to rezone some of the inner city suburbs, which would change the situation for car owners who live in or visit some inner city suburbs. The plan is to extend the CBD parking rules outward to suburbs like Fortitude Valley and South Brisbane, and to decrease the minimum number of car spaces required in new residential buildings to about half a park per apartment. As the Brisbane Channel covered in the video on traffic congestion and public transport accessibility, public transport close to the CBD is quite good, and easing the requirements for parking spaces in new buildings could have a positive effect on the cost of new housing. And while we're talking about public transport, the buses that will be used for the metro will now replace buses on the 169 route as of October 21st. We hope to see buses freed up by the metro redeployed to extend the bus network, and the Brisbane Channel will be watching closely with interest. Thanks to the Brisbane Channel's members who support videos like this one. Elite contributors Flying Beardman, Darbee Royal and Chad Martin, insider MostlyReading, and these supporters. A genuine thank you to each one of you. Works continue on the Cross River Rail, which is a $6.3 billion state government project. And good news for anyone trying to get to PA Hospital is that Dutton Park train station has reopened. It was closed from April Fool's Day in 2023. While it's been running again since the 21st, Cross River Rail construction will still be ongoing in the area. Also Cross River Rail related, this month it was announced after community consultation that the new Cross River Rail station on Albert Street will be, wait for it, Albert Street Station. Brisbane residents were asked to choose from Albert Street, Brisbane City, City Botanic Gardens and Frogs Hollow, a historic name for the area. The traditional owners were also consulted, and while it seems that the Queensland Government actually wanted to name it Meanjin, the traditional name for the area as explained in this video, the traditional owners couldn't actually agree on how it should be spelt or even pronounced. And so that was kind of put aside and Albert Street was selected. So it may be that Albert Street is only a temporary name until the traditional owners can actually come to some kind of consensus on how to spell and pronounce the name Meanjin. While the Cross River Rail continues toward completion, there is still some dissent over other rail projects in Greater Brisbane. Creation of a second rail corridor in Logan, part of plans to connect Salisbury Station in Brisbane City with Beaudesert, is seen by some transport specialists as being way too slow. While just this month the Queensland Government unveiled details of a $20 million business case which included 11 stations, many say the line is already much needed by those currently forced to rely on cars. While the state government says that construction of the rail would not be required until the mid-2030s. As was identified in the study mentioned in this video about Brisbane's poor public transport, Logan does have some of the worst public transport accessibility in all of Greater Brisbane. But also this month, the state government announced a series of upgrades to Logan's bus network starting in December this year. Changes include higher frequency and longer hours of operation, as well as construction of new bus stops and extensions or alterations of routes to improve accessibility to the bus network. But there's also dissatisfaction in Ipswich around rail lines. Teresa Harding, the mayor of Ipswich City, opened a fake train station in Ripley, a town that has been waiting 18 years for a real one to be built. It was part of a protest in the lead up to the state election over the fact that a project to build a fast rail line called the I2S, which would connect Ipswich to Springfield and allow a 21-minute commute from Ipswich to the CBD of Brisbane, have been stuck in the planning stages since 2006. Mayor Harding wanted a commitment from both major parties to fund construction, which she estimates would be between $2 and $3 billion. And while we're in Ipswich, a heartbreaking photo of a mother koala with her joey was released by Ipswich Koala Protection Society. They had died after being hit by a car. Koalas have been declared endangered since 2022, and the photo was issued as a reminder to take care on the roads, especially at this time, which is peak breeding season, and many koalas are moving around. After habitat loss, cars are the second largest threat to koalas, with around 300 killed by cars every year in southeast Queensland. Another threat to koalas is fire ants. While the Brisbane Channel's September update mentioned new fire ant sightings, a newly released report by the Australia Institute has now estimated that if fire ants are allowed to spread, every year they could cause 6 deaths, trigger 116 medical visits, and bring many more costs to Queenslanders, including medical and vet expenses. The Queensland Government is now making DIY fire ant treatment kits accessible for free to all householders in Queensland, both owners and tenants. I'll leave a link in the video description so you can order one for your home. You can use one even if you haven't seen any fire ants on your property. A bit of a change of pace now, and just 6 years after opening, Felons Barrel Hall looks set to close for redevelopment into a new 77-room hotel, which will include retail and entertainment areas. The Artemis Group, who are behind the redevelopment, also want to put in a pool that hangs over the river, along with new public spaces with a focus on greenery. At this stage, they're preparing to put in a development application to the Queensland Government. And while we're talking about developments, Moreton has put in an application to build twin towers at 204 Alice Street, which is opposite the City Botanic Gardens. The towers would be 273.5 metres, less than a metre below the Civil Aviation Safety Authority's limit for Brisbane CBD, and 244 metres tall respectively, meaning that when completed, Moreton would own 4 of the 6 tallest buildings in the city. Their application was days from being decided on when the next-door neighbour, Royal on the Park Hotel, raised concerns to the council, saying that they had their own development plans for their property, and the proposed Moreton development didn't have a plan to integrate with the surrounding area. Both properties are between the soon-to-open Kangaroo Point Bridge and the new Edward Street Cross River Rail Station. Their opening will vastly increase the value of properties in that area. Speaking of developments, not even 2 months after the Queen's Wharf precinct has opened, and the Star's woes continue. Towards the end of September, Star Entertainment Group's full-year results were revealed, showing the group had lost money for the 5th year in a row. CEO Steve McCann indicated the group would cut 350 roles, freeze salary increases, and reduce spending on consultants, as well as selling assets, including Treasury Brisbane assets. It was looking like the Queensland Government would issue $60 million in tax relief, but the Premier Stephen Miles has said discussions are at a standstill due to the Star's refusal to waive executive bonuses. But one piece of good news relating to the Queen's Wharf precinct is that a much-loved Brisbane icon will be making a comeback. Artist John Coleman's 10-metre-long Cicada sat between lanes at the Cultural Centre busway station for 18 years until it was removed in 2022 when upgrades for Brisbane Metro started. But it's been announced that the giant Cicada will be installed in the Queen's Wharf precinct in the second quarter of 2025. It will include a soundscape that features over 130 cicada calls from different species around the world and will be lit from below at night. And finally, a Brisbane-based research project has made great progress in understanding ADHD and Parkinson's disease. The study, led by Associate Professor Miguel Renteria and PhD candidate Luis Garcia Marin from the Queensland Institute of Medical Research, Berghofer, led 189 international researchers who analysed MRI brain scans and DNA samples from 76,000 participants around the world. They found over 254 genetic variants that can carry a higher risk for both ADHD and Parkinson's. The researchers say that while these findings are significant, more research does need to be done to establish a causal link between the genes identified and various diseases. Don't miss out on more updates and a wide range of videos about all things Brisbane. Make sure you're not only subscribed, but that you have all notifications selected by clicking the bell icon and clicking all. Thanks to everyone who's become a member or subscriber of the Brisbane Channel in the last few months. If you're new here, be sure to leave a message in the comments to say hi, and I'll see you in the next video.